Is that the county?
That was something that the district attorney's office did, which it's you know, pretty much just comparable to what he had. I had given it to Bill when he was working on
Okay.
it.
Okay, we're all
So
set.
let's stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Trustee Cheney?
Here?
Trustee Foster? Here. Mayor Newhart?
Here.
Trustee Calora? Here. And Trustee McKnight is absent.
And this is a work session, January 2nd, 2024, with two different topics. One is the draft code of ethics that we've been working on, and then the other is a discussion on the 2024 grants that we have received, and we are at the threshold of trying to figure out how to manage them. So, but we'll start with the ethics. And you all, I believe, received a letter from our council, which was redlined.
Yep.
So my thought was to just use that as a template, if that's okay.
Do you want us to just, how would you like to?
Well, I'll just go through it and just say, with each red, so we're at the purpose, and the only change is in 9.2 in the applicability, where it says applies to the elected officials, officers, and employees. So that's pretty straightforward. And then an officer underneath village employee, any officer or employee or elected official or appointed board or committee member of the village work, whether paid or unpaid, and whether serving as full-time, part-time, or advisory. Then under children, as used in this chapter, the term children shall include all biological offspring, adopted persons, and stepchildren of oneself and one's spouse or partner, which is a great clarification. And then there are no red lines until we get to family relationship. As used in this chapter, the term family relationship means spouse, parent, step-parent, sibling, step-sibling, sibling, spouse, child, stepchild, uncle, aunt, nephew, niece, first cousin, or household member of the village employee. An individual having any of these relationships to the spouse of a village employee. And so it's just, again, greater clarification of that description. And then a word change, instead of soliciting appointments, it is lobbying for appointments. And the red line in that is, as used in this chapter, the term lobbying for appointments means canvassing members of the village board or other village officers directly or indirectly, etc. And under Article 2A, these are standards of conduct. So the red line is all elected officials of the Village of Warwick are required to annually file a disclosure statement in writing with the village clerk, disclosing their business positions, investments, real estate holdings, and interests in contracts. Such disclosure shall be limited to interests which could present potential conflict of interest in execution of the elected official's duties as provided upon the standard disclosure from a form approved by the village board. And that's new. So that, I mean.
Yeah, I have a quick comment about that.
Yeah.
When we had our meeting about this, I had thought that we were looking for any board in like a decision-making capacity would do that. Am I misremembering?
I don't know if you are, I mean, for some reason, I think there was some discussion pointing to that as well.
The village board, obviously, we're the only elected, I mean, other than, but we're in a decision capacity, but there are other boards that have a decision capacity.
Yeah.
So,
I think it really should be for all boards. And the reason why I say that is, for example, I'm on a county board, and I have to fill out a form every year, in terms of, you know, ethics and also where my income comes from, et cetera. And I think it's important, even though it's you know, frustrating to have to do it every year, it's very important because we're in a small community and where, you know, there could be definitely direct connections or conflicts. So I especially because these other boards, I mean, we're making legislative decisions, but the other boards are also making determinations, you know, especially with planning and zoning board of appeals, that really do affect the community and also have a monetary aspect to them in terms of the success of a project or if a project moves forward. So, yes, I agree, but what do you guys think?
Well, I guess it's the question, they're covered, appointed officials are covered by the ethics laws, they are considered employees, so they're not allowed to have those conflicts. So the question is, are we going to require of them to provide the disclosure form, to fill out and submit the disclosure form? Is that the question that's on the table?
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
the question.
I think probably for the planning board and the ZBA, I don't know necessarily architectural review since they're an advisory board.
Right, I agree.
Also, perhaps any, like, commission member, like the shade tree commissioner? Do you think, it seems like that was a position in the past that could have benefited from such a disclosure. I don't,
Mm-hmm.
because they're making decisions about, yeah.
I mean, you referred to the county form. The county form requires it of every elected, including the legislature, appointed to any county committees or boards, and it also includes a lot of the employees, management level, and you know, even a little below management level if they're involved in contracts or things like that. So while the county's kind of more aggressive in that way, they're also less aggressive relative to who you're related to and what their what your responsibilities are relative to them being needing to disclose things, because it's pretty much just I think, if I'm not mistaken, children, spouse, but I mean, I don't think it extends to brother or sister, you know, any of those. Because you could get into a pretty onerous disclosure statement if you're trying to figure out, you know, what businesses your children are involved in that may or may not
This doesn't.
have a relationship to the village.
That's interesting because I had interpreted this section as being personal interests that could present a conflict of interest. I hadn't read into that far into it, but that clarity is probably necessary because family relationship is included in the definitions above, but under the standards of conduct, it says disclosing all elected officials, etc., disclosing their business positions, investments, real estate holdings, and interests in on contracts. Such disclosure shall be limited to interests which could present potential conflicts of interest in execution of official duties.
Yeah. And I think the county form, if I recall correctly, you know, doesn't really get into your investments.
Yeah.
So if you've got, you know, money in a 401k, I mean, they're not.
No.
Can you get us a copy of the county form so we can look at it?
It's online.
Okay.
But yeah, it's available. So I believe it's online. If not, I can get it.
Yeah.
But you're right, it does, because it references potential conflicts of interest, and then under conflict of interest, later, it references potential conflicts arising from family relationships or close business or political associations.
So are we in agreement that it should be more than the village board, but should include the planning board and the ZBA?
I think it should include the ARB too, just to cover everyone. I think in the future, if we
Yeah.
wanna give them more teeth. You know, in the meeting I was at,
Mm-hmm.
one of the board members did recuse himself because it was a project that
That
his
they
partners
work-
were getting.
Yeah.
And Steve is not going to be at the meeting tonight?
No. And you mentioned the Shade Tree Commission.
I just think it's all elected and appointed officials in a decision-making capacity.
Mhm.
So who those would be?
Yeah, I'm not sure what decisions ARB and Shade Tree can make that affect, that could promote their public interest without somebody else in the management of our organization that couldn't say time out.
Yeah, I guess,
But I guess having the information
Yeah, just having it out there.
helps.
well, the example with the shade tree commissioners, if there's a tree that's gonna be cut down, that's supposed to be communicated to the board, right? That's part of the process, but
Or to the building inspector. and
building
to the-
inspector,
and to
so
the-
if they,
Mike Mosier, DPW.
Yeah.
Yeah.
an example would be if they had a tree removal service and then recommended,
Of course, yeah.
hypothetically.
Well, but that all goes through existing contracts that are managed by the Department of Public Works. So it might, this is where, when the county looks at it, it's like, anybody in a management or procurement role that has some decision-making, the county should know what, they should disclose what their interests are in case there is the potential for a conflict.
So,
Yeah.
so then that might, I can understand why that would exclude the shade tree commissioner if they're not making independent decisions, and the AHRB, they're in an advisory capacity. Is the shade tree commissioner an advisory position, not a decision-making?
Well,
It's, well, go ahead.
it could be decision, there could be decisions that are made, but those decisions wouldn't include procuring the services that are needed to be performed to act out what the decision was.
Right, like for tree removal, that would be through
DPW
DPW.
and the contract that we have with the tree removal company.
But what about a development, like a private development? The private developer would contract with the tree removal company.
Right, and if there are street trees, then we have a say in, how and what happens, and or may have some level of responsibility, like Homestead Village, for example. They had a large number of ash trees. Some were on our right of way, and some were not, and so we had to determine which was which, and so that was a rather large project, but so I think in the vetting process of hiring somebody, I don't think we would probably want to hire somebody who is connected with a tree removal service, because that would seem like a direct conflict.
Okay, and that, given that that's the only potential conflict, unless they were, had like an interest in the
Or
property
they
or
were,
something
like,
to that effect.
Selling lumber on the side, right? I think there's a lot more, now there's an actual commission, which is a big difference.
Yeah,
Yeah,
okay.
see if we can have that, okay.
So
So,
all elected and appointed officials in decision-making capacity, e.g. village board, planning board, zoning board, are required to annually file a disclosure statement. I.e., because then that's limiting. E.g. leaves it open
yeah,
if we were to ask somebody.
that's true, yeah. But going back to the ARB, I mean, I don't know if they really need to. I don't know if it's really, they're an advisory board to the planning board.
Yeah.
If there is a conflict, we have two architects on the board, and they do, I mean,
They
they,
do business ugly,
they understand
Yeah.
that they can't be,
yeah.
okay. Raina, did you get all that?
I did.
You did? Thank you. I didn't.
What about employees? Are there any employees that should disclose interest?
Well, I would think it would be the kind of top members, such as the head of the building department, DPW, the clerk's office, and the treasurer.
Yeah.
So-
Yeah, because they have, significant responsibility over procurement, and procurement is generally where the line gets
Yeah.
very fuzzy.
Mhm.
And you want to have it clear and everybody know what's going on.
Yeah, I think that makes sense. Okay. So going down, under gifts. No village officer or employee shall directly or indirectly solicit any gift or accept or receive any gift having a value of $75 or more, provided, however, that this section shall not apply to unsolicited campaign contributions and fees paid for attendance at a sponsorship of election fundraising events. Is that from somewhere? Is that, I don't know.
I think that was in there, but it might have gotten edited. Could you read it again? Because I
Yeah.
can't read it on my copy.
Okay. It says, provided, this is the red line portion, provided, however, that this section shall not apply to unsolicited campaign contributions and fees paid for attendance at or sponsorships of election fundraising events.
Yeah, that was added because there was a concern about that the language read in such a way that it made the election contributions look funky. And
Okay.
but those are neither unethical if you're not soliciting them nor illegal.
How do you define soliciting them? Because if you send out a letter that says,
Come to my fundraiser.
not come to my
Or
fundraiser,
no,
or just contribute to my campaign,
Well, it shouldn't be from you. It should be through the Friends of Barry.
Isn't that
do we
the
wanna
way the
draw
law
that
is written?
distinction? Well, I mean,
Yeah.
Yeah.
well, villages are unique. If you don't spend $1,000, all you have to do is report that you didn't spend $1,000.
Mm-hmm.
If you spend over $1,000 or receive a contribution, in other words, if you're using any money but your own, you have to file with the State Board of Elections. You have to create a committee and go through the legal process for doing that.
Yeah, like in the last election.
Right?
So
It
maybe
didn't happen.
Yeah.
provided, however, that this section shall not apply to, legally obtained campaign contributions and fees instead of unsolicited, just to kind of make it clear that as long as
Yeah.
you're within
Yeah. That's
a
legal
good change.
boundaries.
Say that again then.
Either, I don't know if that's too verbose, legally obtained, or just legal campaign contributions.
I think
Legally
Legal.
obtained.
legally obtained.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's more direct, right?
Or in-kind services. campaign contributions or in-kind services.
Okay,
Or in-kind and fees paid for attendance, yeah.
But I don't know that we need ad fees paid for because that's legal.
Yeah, that's correct. And fees paid for attendance at or sponsorship of election fundraising events.
That's legal, so
so do we need that then?
it's probably redundant.
Yeah.
So then it should read, provided however that this section shall not apply to legally obtained campaign contributions or in-kind services.
Perfect.
Okay. Going down the roster, as you see that there's been a alphabet change along the way, so. And then under future employment, a village employee shall not, after termination of service or employment with the municipality, appear before any board, commission, or agency of the village in relationship to any case, proceeding, or application in which he or she personally participated during the period of his/her service or employment, or which was under his/her active consideration for the 2-year period after serving as a village officer or employee.
So I think that there's two elements here. One, if we've touched a contract, you are barred, you should be barred in perpetuity from participating in that. But then, you know, for other things, then there's a period, which would make sense. Does that make sense? So like, for example, if I voted to hire a consultant, then I couldn't, and then I left my position here and then went to work for a consulting firm, I should not ever work on that specific contract in perpetuity, because even after that 2-year period, it could be a 5-year contract and then I'm still financially benefiting from the decision that I helped make. But I could still go work for that firm and then work for the village under an alternate contract. So that was kind of I think this change was made to kind of address the comment that I had made before, but it doesn't quite get there.
It sounds like it's like a different,
There's two things,
different
yeah,
things,
two elements
two
here.
elements.
So it makes sense for us to not leave and then come as a consultant like immediately. We still need that 2-year period,
Right.
but and I don't know if 2 years is, you know, sometimes it's 1 year, sometimes.
So this
It's
says,
2 years.
after termination, is termination the same as like resignation, or is
Yeah.
that?
Termination
it's the
is
same
just
thing, the
separation.
ending? Okay.
Mhm. Yeah, see, this is worded so it's just that you can't come for an issue that you actively made a decision on
Yeah.
for 2 years. And that, I think, is something that needs to be barred in perpetuity. That period of time is just, that would be 2 letters, I think.
So how do we divide this? Can this remain as is, or do we have to change this?
We have to change the yellow
This has to
part
be
to say
split, right.
in perpetuity, and then, you know, nevertheless. Yeah, in perpetuity. I mean, do we want, so then there's a question about, because if we change that to in perpetuity, then we've addressed the issue of financially benefiting from a decision that we helped make. We've addressed that, but we haven't addressed whether or not it's acceptable to leave the village and then turn around and become a consultant for the village within any period of time.
So that's what we're saying, the 2 years. But basically, yeah, so we have to set up so that it's that you can't come back within 2 years and do any work for the village.
Yeah, is that what we want?
I mean, that doesn't mean the firm the person goes to can't work for the village. It's
That's
just that
right.
they
It's just
can't.
that person.
That person, you as a person who work for the village can't.
Yeah. I mean, I think 2 years is long. We're a little village, but I don't have strong feelings about that. I feel most strongly about the conflict of interest on the decision piece.
So we're talking about paid positions, paid employment. What about a volunteer?
I don't, when would we volunteer if we made a decision about a contract or an issue?
If somebody's volunteering, then there's no
Financial
financial
benefit.
gain. Or
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm just thinking about, we were creating a lot of commissions and a lot of boards. And, you know, for the parks, for example, I mean, there's a lot of players and they're all volunteers, which is great.
But if they, like, some of those folks were selected specifically because they might bring resources and energy to help implement the plan,
Correct.
I think that's a little different because the actions that they're taking would be specifically oriented to benefiting the village versus the other way
I see. Yeah.
around.
Okay.
Yeah. Although the way we define village employee, or appointed board or committee member. So we might need to be, or in any case proceeding or application in which he personally participated during that may provide any financial benefit. Like that's the big, you know. It probably needs to go back to Steve.
Yeah.
But we could look at
Yeah.
language from other communities, you know, because they have, lots of communities have this clause.
I'm just, thinking about the fact that we have two architects on the AHRB, and for them to not be able to appear before any board or commission relative to something in the future that they may not be engaged in presently for the, like you were saying, Carly, 2 years, that would probably seriously impact our ability to have architects on that board.
And we have to have architects on that board.
Yeah.
It's-
Yeah, I don't have as big of an issue with that as them benefiting from a decision they specifically made. Because we are a small village. Like it would be one thing if we were New York City, and I think they have a tiered approach. So I think I'll have to look this up, but I believe that certain employees cannot appear before the city. It's a specific agency for 1 year, and then others maybe, longer period of time. The state, I think, actually has a longer period of time.
So then, if we're going to edit this, it's just gonna be to, instead of having the 2-year period, it's gonna be in perpetuity.
But we might have to ask Steve to help with the language to make sure that we don't inadvertently, because the way that we define a village employee above is pretty broad. It includes people appointed to boards or committees. Well, the stakeholder advisory group was not technically a committee. We specifically called that a stakeholder advisory group. but the comprehensive plan committee was a committee. But we have, like, Bo Kennedy was on the committee, and then he's a developer, so he comes forward. So we don't want to be precluding that kind of thing.
Right.
That wasn't, you know,
Yeah.
and that wasn't decision making. That was not a
Input.
yeah, it was like an input. It was kind of, yeah. So I think we have to be careful about the
Yeah,
language.
yeah,
Yeah,
we
Yeah.
really have to, if we want to get the professionals that we feel we need to serve on these committees, and that we just have to
Well,
make sure we're not, you know,
let's take a
creating
village
barriers.
engineer, for example. Maybe that's a good. So if we sever ties with the engineering company that we have, does that mean that they have to wait 2 years before they could actually have a client that would be involved in a project for this village? Based on,
No, I think we were talking about removing that 2-year piece and making it about the decision
okay,
making.
So in other words, you can't make a decision on something or be participating in a decision and then going and working for the business that benefited from that
correct.
decision. But again, the village engineer is not a village employee, they're a consultant to the village.
Right. And they aren't making decisions, they're providing advice.
Information. and
Yeah.
advice, yeah.
But if they help in the scoring of a proposal that then leads us to make a, you know, they cannot then become a sub-consultant to the winning contract on that proposal, like ever.
Right, I mean, they're opening bid documents, they're making a determination that they bring to the board. The board makes the final decision, but it's definitely with the direction.
Well, yeah, we get a recommendation.
Okay. Okay,
Yeah.
I think we're gonna have to kind of hash this out with our council.
I bet, and NICOM might have some language too, and then there's post-employment restriction, and maybe that's like the language post-employment
Yeah,
restriction.
I think the language is not really very clear overall on this one.
Yeah, now I'm wondering if we should add to definitions things like consultant or advisor or appointed, just to make that more clear.
There are, here, this is the way it's worded, New York City's post-employment restrictions. It says, there are 4 post-employment restrictions on city employees. These restrictions address: 1, negotiating for a job with a private employer who is involved with a particular matter the city employee is working on in his or her city job. 2, appearing before one's former city agency within 1 year after leaving city service. 3, working on a particular matter that one worked on personally and substantially as a city employee. And 4, using or disclosing confidential information gained in city service. And then they provide more detail.
So there's a 1-year restriction, but then are the rest in perpetuity, or they?
It's in perpetuity if they were involved in, you know, if they were personally and substantially involved. Then it's in perpetuity.
Well, I think that language is actually a lot clearer.
Yeah, and then they do provide greater detail on what they mean by each of these. So I can share the link to this. I don't know that we have to be as, this post-employment restrictions document is 17 pages long. I don't think we need to, you know, I don't think we need to go that far,
No.
but there's some good clarity in here that we could probably,
So if you could send us all the link, and we'll make sure that Steve gets that too.
yeah,
Thank you.
Yeah.
yeah.
Moving right along. The next red line is under planning board, and it looks like we've included zoning board of appeals. Members of the planning board and/or the zoning board of appeals shall not engage within the village in the real estate, insurance, building, contracting, or building material business during their employment on each board. That's pretty clear.
Yeah, I thought that responded to what we had discussed.
Yeah. And then down to N, treatment of the public. An officer or employer of the village board shall treat all members of the public, whether a person, firm, or other organization, with respect and in a professional manner, with equal consideration without special advantage in carrying out his or her official duties. And that was one I wanted to make sure remained.
Me too.
I mean, that's, well, I don't see that as an ethics, a component of the ethics. It's really, something that's more procedural or employee manual related.
My feeling is, I've been thinking about this since the last meeting, like, you and Carly made a great point that it is employee manual, but this is a document that the public sees, so I would like to know that the public is seeing that appointed and elected officials are being held to a higher standard, and I think that this section sums that up.
So what's the process for someone who violates it?
I think it would be the same.
Ethics board.
Go ahead, I'm sorry.
I would go to the ethics board, the same procedure as violating anything else.
Okay, but so I could get on board with this if it was specifically about the influence that the elected person has or the appointed official has and how that is affecting a member of the public's ability to engage with local government. Like, that would be, if we're suppressing, if we are treating someone in such a way that suppresses their ability to engage, then that's an ethics issue, right?
Right.
Because
Right.
that's, that's specifically using our influence in such a way. But I don't know that, like, this is kind of, this whole shall treat all members, with respect and in a professional manner, there's a lot of judgment there. I mean, there's a lot of judgment in all of this, but that's very personality specific. And someone could get offended from a candid conversation and then make an ethics argument. That's not, I think it's yeah,
I interpreted it the way that you first described it, as like, if you're behaving in a way that's preventing anyone from conducting business. That's how I interpreted this. But I understand that if you want to restructure the wording so it's more clear that that's what it's referring to.
But that I would propose that we make edits to I, which is about improper influence. A village employee shall not, by his or her conduct, give reasonable basis for the impression that any person can improperly influence him or unduly enjoy his favor in the performance of his official duties. I think we could say, or the reverse, like that.
Right, I mean, my concern, and I've seen this happen in real life amongst boards, is a diminishment of someone who has come before the board, with intellectual knowledge about a subject. And that is, I think, inappropriate. And, and that person should not be treated in that manner. So I don't know how, maybe our handbooks speaks to that, but I think it also, because it is diminishing, it seems even more because through that diminishment is also creating a certain color of decision making to the rest of the board. And so that, to me, is ethically inappropriate.
What, I
But-
think, oh, sorry.
But that's a management employee issue. It's not a public issue. This basically opens it up to being a public issue so that anyone can file charges if they feel they were mistreated, and have to then go through the whole ethics process. I think it should be handled in a employee management, person who was grieved, process, as opposed to, because, somebody, if they wanted to, could, as Carly said, take offense at something that maybe offense didn't, it's in the eye of the beholder.
Right.
And I just
I mean,
wouldn't
that-
want to weigh down the ethics board with potentially frivolous complaints that I think should be handled by management.
Can I propose a change to language for I that might help with this? And I agree with Barry. I think the delineation here is that this makes it about feelings rather than outcomes. And I
Right.
know that's not the intention, but that's the way the language reads.
I get it.
So perhaps we could, for I, improper influence, a village employee shall not, by his or her conduct, give reasonable basis for the impression that any person can improperly influence him or unduly enjoy his favor or unduly experience disfavor in the performance of his official duties, or that he is affected by the kinship, rank, position, or influence of any party or person. And maybe we could say he or she. But, because that I think it is imbalanced, because a lot of this is about, that people will experience inappropriate favors. And so what I'm hearing you all refer to is like inappropriate disfavor, like the inverse of that.
Well, I'm fine with that language. Barry, what is your, still think it's,
I think that getting N out of there is important. I think I have to think a little bit more on the, even on that whole section I hadn't really, I kind of glossed over it, I guess. But it seems to fit within that.
I mean, this section is called Standards of Conduct. And that's clear to me, so.
I like that treatment of the public is its own thing. I think that's important that there's a note on treatment of the public. And just change the rest.
Maybe under treatment of the public, it's almost like that improper influence section is like,
This,
it's the same thing. It's improper influence / or treatment of the public, or even just, because it's either favoritism or the opposite of that, unduly influencing the decision-making process at the village. Like retaliatory decision-making would fall under this,
yeah, okay.
I mean, retaliatory decision-making has got to be pretty tough to prove. How do you even judge that?
I mean, how do you prove favoritism, which we also have here?
Well, if there's something to be gained through a relationship, that would be favoritism, and that would be pretty clear,
But
I
if
would
you-
think.
Or something
least
to be
clearer.
gained by specifically denying an individual
Yeah,
that, you know, that they,
a park permit to do something.
which is not allowed, like, that's out of the bound, that's overstepping our abilities anyway, right?
But we're allowed to decide against something
Mm-hmm.
and to prove that it was with malice. You know, I mean, it's gonna be very difficult.
Good thing we have the ethics board.
Not for me, it's gonna be very difficult for the ethics board.
Where else so how has that been dealt with in the past? Have there been situations that have been brought before the village where someone
Yeah.
said
We've had chairmans replaced.
Yes.
that because they were behaving with malice towards members of the public, or?
Inappropriately, let's, I guess, put it that way. Some of the,
Well, I mean, so every employee and appointed official, elected official, needs to abide by the ethics code and the employee code of conduct. And your argument is that this piece specifically belongs in the employee code of conduct, and then
My
Mayor and
case
Mary is
I
that
wanted
it belongs in
people to
both.
know that this is what we're following.
I think it makes more sense in I than a standalone, and it makes more sense in terms of, you know, not, it's the influence, but it's also the transverse of that. So I don't know what the language is to, the simple language to just, but maybe it is all under improper influence, and that can be any way, you know, why.
Improper influence.
Yeah,
slash
improperly
treatment of
influence him
public-
or unduly enjoy his favor. So improperly influencing encompasses positive or negative. So maybe there isn't a need to
Yeah,
modify the I at all.
I think that it's okay in that, I mean, it's broad enough and yet it talks about it, so. And then we have the code of conduct, so that backs it up. So,
That makes sense to me. So Mary, how do you?
Mary wants it. Sure. Okay, we'll talk. Okay, let's keep going, because our
Yeah, we have
clock is
11 minutes left.
11 minutes of this.
So will we just sort of, sorry to pause, because
Yeah.
the implications are that we're not talking about the grants.
No, we
so-
will during discussion.
Discussions. There's
okay.
discussions
Okay.
in the next meeting.
Yeah, we have to talk about grants,
Okay.
at least get that talk started. Okay, so planning board, where am I?
Board
Under,
of Ethics.
Could,
Article 3.
Yeah.
could we go back to M?
no.
Well, you skipped over everything I wanted to talk about. But
Oh,
Just-
golly,
and
oh,
this-
I'm just
yeah.
going through the red lines, man.
yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
know. That's
And then they're your red lines.
so. Yes, then there are my red lines.
Okay, go
But
ahead.
this whole lobbying for appointments, I get it. Render anything, give any money, things like that. But does it involve a resident approaching a trustee and saying, or the mayor, and saying, I'd really like to serve on a board?
That's not lobbying,
That's
that's just
not-
making a
yeah.
request, it's something
Yeah.
known.
Yeah, it
Lobbying,
says,
It was like,
Shall-
here's $100 or, right?
yeah, it says shall either directly or indirectly pay, render, or give any money, service, or other valuable thing to any person, etc. So I think it's about
you're getting something
In return.
in return.
It's just, isn't lobbying just like a nice way to say bribing?
Exactly. I think that might be it.
But lobbying,
okay.
am I,
As long as lobbying is defined by the first sentence there.
yeah, because the definition, I hear what you're
So-
saying, Barry, because the definition above doesn't coincide with that.
Is lobbying in our definitions, or is
It
that
is,
something
but
that-
it doesn't mention using. The definition.
Yeah, the definition's different from that first sentence in M. The definition says that you can't canvass members of the village board directly or indirectly in order to obtain preferential consideration. So, you know, if somebody knows that they're one of 3 people that are being considered for an appointment to the planning board, and they want to talk to members of the board to say, well, these are my qualifications, and this is why I think I'm the best person to serve in this capacity.
They should be able to do that.
They should be able to do that.
Yeah.
And that's not prohibited by M, but it seems to be prohibited by the definition.
Yeah, the definition just defines lobbying, but M kind of links
Describes
that
it,
to
yeah.
saying
What it
that
is.
you're paying for
Right.
it.
So I think somehow
In such.
the
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
the definition has to be made similar to what's in M.
Or M could say in that final sentence, lobbying for appointments in such a way shall disqualify the individual engaging in such activity from appointment. Because it says above, no person shall do these things, and if you do this, then you're disqualified.
I think the first sentence is really a definition of what is meant by lobbying in this case.
Yeah. But that, yeah, in this
Yeah.
particular case, but that actually isn't the technical definition of lobbying.
Right.
It's more
Right.
what's above, yeah.
Right.
So maybe there's a different word that we could
Maybe
use.
just take lobbying for appointments out of the definitions. If you take it out of the definitions, then there's no contradiction. And you're dealing with just what's in that section.
Originally, it said soliciting
Yeah, I was
appointments,
thinking,
which I
should
think
we
is,
go back to that? Is that,
What said soliciting?
Originally,
Definition, oh,
yeah.
M.
yeah,
I don't know that soliciting, which is really, I guess, marketing,
yeah.
which isn't necessarily the same term, but it seems to apply here, that's a bad thing. That engaging in discussions with board members, as long as you're not slipping them an envelope.
Right, or offering to do.
Yeah.
hello.
Is everybody's holidays good?
Yeah.
We're good.
Could, should it be worded as like using value in lobbying for appointments or bribery? Maybe that's the, maybe that's
But
the,
the first sentence has said that, basically what you're not allowed to do, and then seeking an appointment in the manner previously noted shall disqualify the individual.
I mean, maybe the point of this is, do we have bribery covered anywhere else in the ethics? I mean, that falls under a conflict of interest, but
I don't remember seeing,
that's basically what this is saying, is just saying, and then maybe we could modify it to say, or to curry favor in any way.
Yeah, I don't know if bribery is really the best word. It sounds pretty intense, and I I think it's more about influence.
Oh, and gifts,
influence-
we have gifts in there.
Influencing, you know, the influencing
Influencing,
to decision-making.
yeah.
I mean, I think that get rid of the definition, and then in M, just, you know, keep the first sentence the same, and that, then the second sentence saying, seeking an appointment,
In such a way.
in such a way as previously stated, shall disqualify the individual.
I think that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Takes the contradiction out.
So
Yeah.
we're removing which
We're removing lobbying. so-
lobbying, okay.
The
Lobbying
definition.
The
for,
definition,
and
okay.
the definition, and then this second sentence, lobbying for, comes out, seeking an appointment in the manner previously noted.
So should the title of this be seeking appointments for M? Just so it has a title?
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Seeking appointments.
Okay. Before we move too far, any further, what other red lines did you want to discuss that I?
Yeah, I guess I go back to the personal interest, and
Which number?
it's the definitions.
Okay,
And, you know, having a direct interest in the affairs of a corporation business partnership of which officer or employee is a member, partner, owner, director, or employee. It seems that there should be some level of, you know, an interest, you know, if you've got like 5% of the stock of, more than 5% of the stock or 10% of the stock of an organization, then, yeah, you need to
disclose it.
that, but, you know, if it's less than that, less than 5%, I would say it's probably, you know, immaterial.
But what if it grows after you make a
Well,
decision?
once it goes over 5%,
You have to disclose.
yeah. Just a thought. Um, And then the other ones I haven't gotten to yet, so, we haven't gotten to yet.
Next
Okay.
time.
So, I mean, it basically, pretty simple, the Board of Ethics, the establishment doesn't talk about how to fill vacancies.
Right.
So I'm not sure whether that's covered somewhere else, like I know that it's either village law or general municipal law that basically says that, a vacancy is appointed by the mayor without any village board involvement. It's the right of the mayor to do that. And if that's the case, then that's the case. This can't, I guess, supersede that. And then on C, it says appointments to the Board of Ethics shall be made at an annual reorganization village, at the annual reorganization village board meeting. The mayor will appoint the chairman. I don't know that shouldn't, it's not clear that that's part of what the village board approves. Because in A above, it says that the members would be appointed by the mayor and approved by the village board of trustees. So maybe if we change that to appointed, consisting of 5 members, and appointed by the mayor and approved by the village board of trustees, maybe somewhere including designation of the chairman.
And then just delete that second
Yeah.
Right.
sentence down on C.
Though it does, the one piece that is critical is that it is part of the annual reorganization.
So that would stay, but the second sentence, the mayor will appoint the chairman, would
Right.
be deleted.
Yeah,
Okay.
But that has to be put up above.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, about the,
yeah, that makes
Chairman.
it more
Yeah.
clear. Cleans it up. Alright, so do you wanna leave off at Article 3 then, pick it up next time?
Well, we have such few to go, we could do it during discussion in the meeting.
Yeah, well, let's see where, I mean, we're really so close. So. So we're down to duties. So one, to render the advisory opinion to the mayor, the village trustees, and village department heads on written requests of the same. The options of the Board of Ethics shall be advisory and confidential, and in no event shall the identity of the village employee be disclosed except to authorized persons and agencies. Such opinions shall be on the advice of the village attorney. That sounds pretty straightforward. And then the second, upon written request of the village board to conduct investigations and recommend appropriate sanctions for the alleged violation of this chapter.
that's what we're asking them to do.
Yeah.
If there's any question
Yeah.
about that.
That
And
all
then,
makes sense.
then number 4, to review the annual disclosure statements required by this chapter and report to the village board regarding the submission of each statement. The opinions of the Board of Ethics shall be advisory and confidential. Oh, we already said that. So that's, he crossed that out.
Yeah.
Okay. And then, so that's pretty straightforward as well. So I think where we need to do some work yet is with that, past employment restrictions, or post-employment, I'm sorry. So.
And then also the threshold, the question of the threshold that
Oh,
Barry
yeah,
had
the Barry,
raised. Mm-hmm.
right, the 5%.
And treatment of the public.
You're not gonna let it go.
Like, no, that is not resolved.
Okay. So it would be threshold of
Business interest.
business interest, okay.
Then would that, from your perspective, Barry, would then that make nonprofit, sitting on the board of a nonprofit become a non-COI?
I didn't think about that.
Because there's no financial interest there, but
Right.
we had we had thought that that was something that was a conflict, or at least I don't
Yeah,
know.
we did.
The royal we. I had thought it was. Yeah, I thought.
Yeah, think
Not
about
sure whether
that.
folks agree.
There's business interest, and then there's
Yeah,
cultural interest.
Yeah, well, there's divided interest.
There's divided
Yeah,
interest,
that's
yeah.
where I think that there's a conflict. Because then,
Okay, so I think we have to shift gears here. And I think we're gonna take just a quick break, if you don't mind, just to get our table together. So can I have a motion to close the work session?
So moved.
second?
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, so we are gonna start our meeting in about 5 minutes, if you don't mind. Sorry, we went a little over time. I gotta get my agenda.
What were the 3 items for Steve? Oh.